Good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America in Washington. This is Live Talk. I am Kip Stube.
And I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya, who are broadcasting from my home in Washington, D.C. due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about COVID-19, proposed electoral reforms, and other issues.
The Ministry of Health reports that almost 700,000 Zimbabweans have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and 342,218 have been vaccinated twice. According to the ministry, Zimbabwe is seeking 500,000 more vaccines from China amid concerns that some people are being turned away from health centers when seeking their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Zimbabwe, since March last year, recorded nearly 39,000 cases of COVID-19, 36,591 recoveries, and 1,594 deaths. Worldwide, Johns Hopkins University reports that over 170 million people have contracted COVID-19 and more than 3.5 million people have succumbed to the disease.
The hospital further reports that at least 1.9 billion people have been vaccinated worldwide.
In politics, the representatives of parties that are in the state-sanctioned Political Actors Dialogue, or POLAD, have just finished a workshop in Nyanga focusing on electoral reforms. According to some people who attended the workshop, all the parties want Zimbabwe to allow many observers in order to make the 2023 elections credible.
The parties also want Zimbabwe to introduce a law compelling the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, ZBC, and other state-controlled media organizations to publicize political messages without any form of payment.
And in basketball, second-ranked Zamalek of Egypt defeated top seed Union Sportivo Monastir of Tunisia 76-63 in the Basketball Africa League finals played yesterday in Kigali, Rwanda.
And the other third seed, a club Atletico Petrola de Luanda of Angola, which is one of the teams that most Zimbabweans were rooting for, as that team has actually played against some teams in the Basketball Union of Zimbabwe makeup, defeated the fourth-ranked Patriots, who are the home team from Rwanda. This is a basketball club that actually comes from Rwanda, the home team. So they were defeated 97-68 to settle for third place in the Basketball Africa League playoffs. And we saw, Gibbs, that the president of Rwanda, Mr. Paul Kagame, was also at the tournament. He actually watched the Patriots play, and we also saw him in the finals, even though his own team, the Patriots, were not there when we saw Zamalek beating Tunisia in that really nail-biting match yesterday.
Yewambe izulwandaba njalo lapha khona namhlanje ke ku live talk sikhangela iCovid-19 kuzobuya ke abantu abafisa ukuthi kuguquke kwezokhetho kwele Zimbabwe njalo lokunye okuchiyeneyo okunye kwakhona ukuthi abantu abalemijovo abaphila njani kulo manje khanya ngazani bathwele nzima okunye kumangalisayo kuzobuya ke uhlangothi lwezempilakahle lubika ukuthi sokulabantu abadlula abafika phose 700,000 asebehlatshwe kokuqala ijekiseni ye-COVID-19 kuzokuthi asebehlatshwe kwesibili bafika 342,218. Uyabika njalo uhlangothi lolu ukuthi soludinga amaphilisi ayikhona amaphilisi soludinga ke amanye amajekiseni kwele China afika khonapho 500,000. So ke khonapho amaphilisi angikhona awuthi phela balijove khonapho kwenza ukuthi lingabulawa i-COVID-19. So kutholakala ukuthi khona manje Marvelous nxa abanye abantu besiya ezibhedlela batshela ukuthi hayi ijekiseni ngani ayikho kumbe kunjani njani, so khonokho ke kwenza ukuthi abantu bangani bayethuka, kodwa abaningi sebegijimela khona ngale ukuthi kubehlatshwa. Siyakhumbula ukuthi i-WHO yathi ke khona ngale Zimbabwe khayangazani ke bangayisebenzisa i-Sinopharm lamanye avela kwele China ngoba khayangani halolongwa ngemfanelo. Kuzobuya nxa sikhangela khona manje sokulabantu abafika phose 39,000 asebabanjwa i-COVID-19 kwele Zimbabwe, kwaphepha abayi-36,591 kumkhuhlane lo, kodwa wabulala abantu 1,594. Khanya ngazani kulobuzima emhlabeni wonke jikelele sokulabantu 1.9 billion asebahlatshwa amajekiseni e-COVID-19. Kwezombusazwe sibonile-ke kade kulomhlangano khona ngale nyanga. Umhlangano lowu kade ngokuthi kuhlolisiswe ezokhetho. Ukhetho siyakwazi marvelous ubuya ngomnyaka ka-2023. So abantu sebefuna ukuthi kuguqulwe indlela eZimbabwe yenza ngayo ukhetho, kumbe kuyahamba njalo kumbe hatshi asikwazi ukuthi kuyahamba njani. So-ke siyakwazi ukuthi abaningi bathi sokumele ukuthi nxa abantu bele mbiko yabo behambise ku-ZBC, behambise ku-Zim Papers, bengabhadali lutho. So yikho bakufuna khonokho. Okunye njalo-ke ku-basketball sibonile-ke izamba lakhe itshaya-ke i-Union Sportive Monesa ye-Tunisia 76-63 ku-Basketball Africa League kuma-finals. Kwasekusithi-ke i-Atletico Petroleus di Luanda yakwele Angola yashaya-ke i-Patriots yakwele Rwanda. So kube njalo khona manje sakhuluma-ke ngokuningi namhlanje. Qhubeka Marvelous.
Aiwa, kunevo vachangobva kupinda muchirongwa tinokuchingamidzai nhasi semusi wemuvhuro ari kupedzisira May 31, 2021 apo nhasi tiri kukurukura pano paLiveTalk pamusoro pedenda rechirwere cheCovid-19 tichitarisa zvakare zviri kuitika panyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika, tichizotarisa zvakare nezviri kubuda kubva kumakwikwi akapera nezuro eBasketball Africa Union anga ari kutambirwa iwo kuKigali kuRwanda. Pari zvino bazi rezveutano rinozivisa kuti pane vanhu 700,000 vawanikwa ivo vachibayiwa nhomba yavo yekutanga yeCovid-19 munyika, uyezve pane vanhu 342,218 vabayiwa ivo nhomba yechipiri pasecond phase yekubayiwa nhomba dzeCovid-19. Bazi rinozivisa zvakare kuti nyika yeZimbabwe iri kutsvaga iyo nhomba dzinokwana idzo 500,000 kana kuti 500,000 kubva kuChina, kuitira kuti vamwe vari kuwanikwa ivo vachienda kunoda kunobayiwa nhomba vari kunzi ivo pari zvino nhomba hadzisi kuwanikwa. Saka ndo zvavari kuedza kuita kuti vakwanise kunge nhomba idzi dzichiwanikwa munyika, kuitira kuti vaye vari kuda kubayiwa nhomba yavo yokutanga pavanoenda kunzvimbo dziri kubayiwa nhomba vawane nhomba idzi dziriko. Zimbabwe zvakare inotaura iyo bazi rezveutano kuti pane vanhu vanosvika ivo 39,000 vawanikwa vakabatwa nedenda iri reCovid-19 kubva denda iri ratanga muna March gore rapfuura. Kozouyawo vamwe vakabata denda iri vakakwanisa kurikunda vari pa36,591, asi zvakare vamwewo vakabata denda iri vakawanikwa vachishaya kubva denda iri ratanga vasvika ivo pa1,594. Tichiona kuti iro vhiki rapfuura iri takaona kuti kuBondorofi Teachers College yekumasvingo kwakawanikwa iko kuine vamwe vakabatwa nenhomba iyi yeCovid-19 vakati wandei chikoro ichi chikawanikwa icho chichivharwa mushure mekunge vebazi rezveutano vemunzvimbo iyi uyezve nevamwe vanoshanda munzvimbo iyi nevamwe vepachikoro ipapo vakataura kuti zvanga zvisingakodzere kuti chikoro ichi chirambe chakavhurwa. Uye tombotarisa imo muno muAmerica nepasi rose, John Hopkins University Hospital hospital hombe imo muno muAmerica inotaura iro kuti pane vanhu 117 million vabatwa neCovid-19 pasi rose, uyezve 3.5 million vawanikwa ivo vachishaya. Hospital iyo yeJohn Hopkins inotaura zvakare kuti vachitarisa kubayiwa kwenhomba 1.9 billion yevanhu vabayiwa nhomba yeCovid-19 pasi rose. Tozotarisa zviri kuitika munyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika, tinoona kuti gungano rePollard iro rinounganidza mapato asiri emuhurumende rawanikwa iro richiita musangano kuinyanga uko vanga vari kutaura ivo panyaya pekurandudzwa zvatingati zvesarudzo kana kuti electoral reform, vachitaura ivo kuti vari kuda kuti apo panozoitwa sarudzo dzemuna 2023 mapato ese anopikisa vawanikwe ivo vachipiwa mukana wekuti vawanikwewo vachiparura zvavanofunga, uyezve zviri kutaura pamusoro pemapato avo panhepfenyuro dzehurumende dzakadai seZBC navana Herald, mapepanhau ehurumende nezvimwewo, vachitaura kuti izvi zvinofanira kuitwa pasina mubhadharo. Saka ndo zvimwe zvavanga vari kukurukura. Tozotarisa zvakare mutambo mukuru wanga uri makwikwi anga ari kuKigali kuRwanda atakaona achipera nezuro eBasketball Africa League, apo takawana Zamalek yekuEgypt ichikunda iyo Monistar yekuTunisia pamutambo wakafadza vazhinji, uyezve zvimwe zvikwata zvemuZimbabwe zviri pasi peBasketball Union of Zimbabwe zvakange zviri kutarisira nemaziso matsvuku vachida kudzidza unyanzvi uri kubva kumakwikwi iwaya. Takaona zvakare chikwata chekuAngola chichiwanikwa chichitora iyo nzvimbo yechitatu mushure mekukunda chikwata chemuimomo muRwanda chemapatriots. Takaona zvakare mutungamiri weRwanda vaPaul Kagame vachienda kunoona makwikwi iwaya apa chikwata chavo chakatamba chemapatriots vakaenda zvakare kumafinals, izvo zvakafadza vazhinji. Nhasi ndawanikwa ndichitaura nemumwe watingati uye murayiridzi wechikwata chemercenaries chekwaMutare chinova chiri icho chikwata chakawanikwa icho chichirwisana nechikwata chekumozambique, vakazokundwa. Chikwata chekumozambique chikazowanikwa chiri icho chakaenda kuBasketball Africa Union iri kuita mutambo iyoyo kuKigali. Saka vanga vari kutaura vaInnocent Sithole kuti mune ramangwana vari kutogadzirira ivo kuti muna August vapinde zvakare mumamwe maqualifiers ekuitira kuti vagokwanisa kunge vachiqualifya kuenda kumutambo mukuru weBasketball Africa League uchaitwa zvakare gore rinouya. Saka vanga vari kuti ivo zvikwanisiro uyezve nerutsigiro rwemari ndo zvimwe zviri kuvakanganisa pamutambo iwoyu webasketball, vachiti ivo vakawanikwa vachitatsurana neMozambique pamutambo wavakaita wekuedzana simba, asi vakazowanikwa vachikundwa nechikwata chekumozambique chakabudirira icho kuti chikwanise kunge chiri pamafinals aya. Pachikwata vakaenda ivo kuKigali kuRwanda, asi Mozambique takaona ichizokundwawo, haina hazvo kuzopinda mumasemifinals asi yakamira ikasvika pazvikwata zvekupedzisira mumakwikwi iwaya. Saka tange tiri kuziva zvese izvi zviri kuitika munyaya dzezvemitambo, munyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika, tichitarisa zvakare denda reCovid-19 iro ratekeshera pari zvino. Gibbs.
Yes, let's start with the what is happening in Zimbabwe right now. We see that, Marvelous, there are some commuter omnibus owners who have been grounded for the past year. So they are saying that they are struggling in terms of, to make a living. So we are lucky that we've got Mr. Kumbula Sibanda, who is the manager of the Zimbabwe International Long Distance Transport Association. He is based in Bulawayo. Mr. Sibanda, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Sibanda. So you've been grounded for the past 1 year. So tell us a bit about this.
Yes, Mr. Dewey, we've been grounded for about a month now.
It seems as if you moved a little bit. Can you be in one place, Mr. Sibanda, so that we can hear you well? Because your network is a bit, is not too well. So can you move where you were when we called you, so that
Okay, can you give me another 5 minutes?
Yeah, so khonapho lapho sumikona iko sokulungile. Ungacheti, unganyamulukuli. Khonapho ke yeke. So go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, we've been grounded. Thank you, Mr. Dube. We've been grounded for almost a year and a month now. And it's just been a very, very difficult time for us. Now it's very difficult to put food on our tables. And considering that the founders of our taxi organization are grown-up people. Now they are approaching some pensionable ages. It's now very, very difficult for them to make ends meet, considering their age as well. So it's been a very, very tough. It's only the government that has given us that chance to work, to operate and adhere to the COVID restrictions. We could have done so. But now we haven't been given that chance. But in South Africa, our counterparts have been given that chance to adhere to the COVID restrictions and not to overload the vehicles. But they are working. But the problem now with the South Africans again is they are not allowed to cross the border using cross-border passenger vehicles. And here in Zimbabwe, our cross-border vehicles were not being issued with cross-border permits. So it's affecting a lot of families very much because most of our drivers, they depend on these cross-border trips. So they are regular payment salaries and whatever. Now they are grounded and just loitering around without nothing to do. So their families are now faced with starvation. If only the government could authorize us to operate each of us with permits, I think it would be a very, very good thing.
So how many people are affected here, in terms of your association? So how many members and,
in terms of our association here in Winter, about 45 members. That means 45 families now got nothing to eat. We are struck about 45 families, and again, just across where we are, there is a cross-border also, a cross-border gate association, which also has got a large number of operators there. I think they're also facing the same situation as ours. It's a terrible situation. Only if we could be allowed to operate and adhere to the COVID regulations, we could do so. They did allow us in December to operate. We operated for just about 2 weeks. We adhered to the COVID restrictions. We sent our people, our passengers, for COVID tests. And we did everything, the sanitizing of passengers and everything, whatever needed. We never experienced any problem, except that we were 2 passengers who tested positive. Then we refunded them, we gave them their money and sent them back. We did adhere to the COVID restrictions. But now, we haven't heard anything from the government concerning the cross-border issue, especially our vehicles. We're using the designated sprinters, 22-seater vehicles.
Yeah,
so
yes.
We are grounded.
Mhm.
Yes, we have got nothing to do at the moment.
Yes, marvelous.
We haven't heard anything
Yes,
from the Minister of Transport.
marvelous. Do you have a question for him?
I'm not sure if he understands, Shona.
No,
so
it doesn't.
let me
It
just
doesn't.
translate what he just said before
Yes,
I
okay.
ask my question. Tiri kunzwapo munyarikani wedu vari kutaura ivo kuti avo vanoita basa remichovha yekuwanikwa vachidhiraivha vachienda kunze kwenyika vari mubulawayo vari kuti vari kutarisana nedambudziko rekuti avo vari pasi pesangano ravo vanoti pane vanhu 45 vari pasi pesangano ravo vari kutotarisana nenzara panguva ino nekuti kubvira pakatanga covid vakabvumidzwa kushanda muna December chete uyezve vakabva vazomiswa nehurumende. Saka pari zvino vari kuti kunyangwe pavakashanda apa vakateedzera zvaidiwa nehurumende kuti vanhu vave vane masanitizer vauye vakatestwa kuti vane covid here kana kuti kwete, vakawanikwa vachizorambidza kuenda mberi nebasa iri, asi vachiti vamwe vavo vanoita mabasa muSouth Africa vari kubvumidzwa munyika iyoyo, vari kuteedzerawo zvinodikanwa nehurumende kuti mota dzisazare, vanhu vawanikwa vakapfeka mamaski uyezve vachishandisa masanitizer, mahand sanitizer nezvimwewo. Saka vari kuchema-chema vachiti ivo dai hurumende yawanikwawo ichitarisa dambudziko iri, nekuti vari kuti avo vanoshanda vachiita basa iri vaakutarisana nenzara panguva ino yeCovid-19. So maybe let me ask him a question that, so moving forward, what exactly would they like the government to do?
Mr. Spanda, there's the question. What do you want the government to do for you?
We're asking our respective government to issue our cross-border passenger vehicles with cross-border permits so that we can operate, we adhere to the strict COVID regulations. That's all. We just need the cross-border permits and the government to allow us to cross the border and also allow our passenger vehicles from South Africa to cross the Beitbridge, especially the Beitbridge border post, without any hassle. That's all what we are looking for. We just want our respective government to put us back into our business. This is an industry. It's an industry that we are talking about. It's the tech industry, the transport industry. We cater for many people. Even some of the vendors who are selling their waste here now, we transport them to Medina, we transport them to Joburg. So with our operations grounded, they are also facing starvation as well. We transport these vendors on a regular basis. So now when our vehicles are grounded, that means they are also grounded. They are grounded as we are. So what we are asking for from our respective government to issue us here in Zimbabwe with our cross-border permit, we will definitely adhere to the COVID restriction, like we did in December when the border was open for about 2 weeks or so. We did adhere to the COVID restriction.
Yeah.
Now, the majority of us are facing starvation. We've got nothing to do. We've been in this business For a long time, since from 1989, we've been in this cross-border business, transporting people. We don't know any other business. And most of us are now approaching pensionable age. So what else can we do? We're just asking the government to look into our plight and help us by issuing our cross-border permits. We are organized associations. We will stick to the COVID-19 restrictions. That's all what we're asking for from our respective governments to issue our cross-border
Yeah.
and allow our passenger vehicles from South Africa to cross without any hassle.
Yes, siyakuzosibanda ngesindebele sibili ngathi elifisa ukuthi uhulumende lenzele khona kuyini khona manje njalo ubona ngani kuyaphetha ngani konke lokho.
Hey, ukuphetha kwakhona bawuduka ngathi ngibona ngathi njengoba sonke singazi nokuthi into le COVID into ezaphela nini. Ngibona ngathi hayi kunkulu kunzima thina sicela kuphela ukuthi uhulumende asisebenzenini siqinise uhulumende aqinise imithetho yona le eyeCOVID ngoba asikwazi lathi kunje isiphetho sakho ukuthi kuyaphetha ngani akula muntu okwazi. So isiphetho sethu bekuyisona lesi ukuthi uhulumende abe uyasidumela ukuthi lathi sibe sisebenza landele imithetho yona le khona lokho kwenziwa lawa amabhasi. Labona la amabhasi asevunyelwe ukube ephuma phansi kwamadolobha emakhaya ngoba ilathi besisho ukuthi siphuma sisiya eGoli sisiya eMessina njengakhona lokade sivele sikwenza ngoba isiphetho sakhona asikwazi ngoba indlala layo iyabulala, iCOVID layo iyabulala kodwa indlala singayivika ngokuthi
singathi siyawuzwa kakhulu-ke singathi khona manje abantu bathwele nzima kanganani labo abangasasebenziyo siyabona ukuthi lawe unje uzihlalele akula nto oyenzayo so liphila njani khonapho-ke baba Sibanda?
Sokunzima kakhulu siyazama lokuthi uthole izintanyana noma amabhekebuli ungamatafula abantu bathengithengise kodwa nakhona kunzima ngoba abantu abaningi le-economy yethu isivele abantu abaningi abathengisayo bangathi sebephethe i-economy so labathengisayo labo sebebaningi kusuka kube nzima njengathi esinabantwana nabantwana abasema-college abasema-university imali yakhona kanye nendlela kodwa lokho esikwenza lokho kwe-cross border ukuthi sichaze siyale siphenduka bekusisiza futhi nakhona bekusenza ukuthi nakhona lapha ekhaya besiyingenisa imali ngoba sibuya nemali siyathenga khona lapha ekhaya siyasapota amabhizinesi siyathenga into zokwakha siyabhadala izinto siyabhadala okhansili yabona so ngezindlela lapho i-economy besincedisa kakhulu ukuthi hayi iyasukuma.
Siyakuzwa kakhulu-ke sicela ubambe khonapho-ke ungayikatshana. So what he's saying is that some of them have now resorted to vending, which is very tricky because there are so many vendors around, especially where he is, So, and he says the economy cannot support so many vendors. So we've been trying to contact the government, the Minister of Transport, but he's not responding to our calls. We made a request for him to join the show before we started recording this show, but there was no response from him. So at the end of the day, it seems as if he's requesting the government to actually act on this issue because he says many families are affected. Maybe you can rope in Mr. Busani Musontini, who is a political and social commentator, to say something. So go ahead, then we go to Mr.
Before I do that, let me just go back to what Mr. Sibanda said for the benefit of our Shona listeners. Potrukunzwa vasibanda vari kutaura ivo kuti ivo semunhu ari musangano rinowanikwa iro richimirira vemichovha reZimbabwe International Long Distance Transport Association vari kuti ivo vari kukumbira kuti dai hurumende yeZimbabwe yataurirana nehurumende yeSouth Africa vovapa marezinesi ekuti vakwanise kunge vachiita mabasa avo nekuti pari zvino vanhu vazhinji vemusangano ravo vakutowanikwa ivo vachiita zvokutengesa mumigwagwa asi vari kuti ivo izvi zvokutengesa mumigwagwa zvawandirwa nevanhu nekuti munhu wese ari kuedza kutengesa mumigwagwa kuti angwavhe asi hazvisi kunyatsobuda pari zvino nekuti vari kuti ivo vamwe vari muassociation yavo yeInternational Long Distance Transport Association vati kurei vakwegura. Saka vari kuti ivo pari zvino vazhinji vari kutotarisana nenzara, uyezve havana cheruviri chekuitira kuti vawanikwe ivo vachichengeta mhuri dzavo. Asi shuwiro yavo ndeyekuti dai hurumende yanzwa chikumbiro chavo ichi. Asi sestudio 7 ipo pano taedza kuti tibate hurumende kuti tinzwe kune gurukota rinomirira vanoita izvozvi zvemabasa aya, kuti tinzwe divi ravo. Asi hatina kukwanisa kunge tichivabata sezvo nhare dzavo dzanga dzisingadayirwe. But I'll cross over now to Mr. Ntini and just say, Mr. Ntini, you've heard the plight of Mr. Sibanda. What would you say about what Zimbabweans are facing now, especially when it comes to those long distance, you know, like the combis, the people that used to ferry people from Zimbabwe to South Africa?
Good afternoon, Marvelous, and good afternoon, Mr. Dube.
Afternoon.
It is quite disheartening to hear what is happening currently, especially given that we are under COVID-19. So these guys pretty much, you know, their only source of income is taken away. I mean, we know clearly that the Beitbridge border post is fully, you know, when it's fully functioning, there are many of these commuter, you know, omnibuses, or I think they call them long distance commuters. They are pretty much the lifeline of that area, especially for Matabeleland. I mean, you know, I remember even back in the 90s, if someone wanted to go to South Africa, they were, you know, the mode of transportation of choice. So to hear that, you know, now it's been more than a year and they're still not allowed to do the, you know, to do their work is sad. You know, not only for them, the cross-border folks. We know that even the local people, they are not allowed either to, you know, continue their work. You know, I don't know exactly why the government is doing this. It is one thing, you know, for them to say they're, you know, following the COVID-19 protocols, but we know that the buses are allowed to cross. So definitely people are crossing. Those that are rich are flying into the country and leaving the country. So the government really needs to, you know, look at how these people are being affected and help them out. You know, it is hard to, you know, sometimes rely on social media, but we know that today one of the ZANU-PF youth, you know, was, you know, came out pretty much saying it appears that, you know, everyone, now all the omnibuses may fall under a certain association started by the First Lady. So I don't know if maybe they are pushing for the same, that these cross-border association members may have to join an association under ZANU, but it appears that's where things are going, which to me, I think that's the start of another issue, another, you know, area where ZANU is going to, you know, take a monopoly over the private industry.
Yeah. So ke babuntini nxa sukhangela sibili bona ngani kuhlupa kanganani konke lokho singayi kuba masipala
lokho kuyahlupha ngoba ilizwe ukuthi liqhubeke kudingakala ama-private citizen ngi-private sector investment. So nxa ukuthi i-private sector ngasakwanisi ukuthi isebenze freely ezenzele intando yabo, ngoba abantu abaningi laba bamakhombi ase-South Africa abantu abazithengela amakhombi abo. Mina I remember kuma-90s kwakulamadoda nje ayethize engangiwazi aye-drive ese-South Africa babezithengela imtshova leyo. So nxa ukuthi i-government izafuna ukuthi bafake i-association under i-ZANU-PF, not even under i-government, but they want to put them under i-association eqalwe yi-First Lady. Ngibona ngathi akuzahlupha kakhulu lo.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we're joined by Mr. Joseph Chuma, who is the former Pelandaba former member of parliament. He's based in Bulawayo. Mr. Chuma, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dube. How are you?
Thank you so much. First of all, we'll say you want to say thank you so much for always joining us, you know, on our shows. And now today we are discussing this issue first concerning, you know, combi operators have been grounded for a long time, for a year now, a year and some months. So they are saying they are struggling to make ends meet, and the government is not giving them any kind of leeway to say operate and make sure that you protect people from COVID. So they are saying really they have no means of making ends meet. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much, Gibbs, for first of all recognizing that I always come into your programs, and I hope very soon you should be talking to your bosses to incorporate me in their payroll. I look forward to earning some US dollars.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, on a more serious note,
yes, sir.
Yes. I know about the plight of the Kombi people. We've had several meetings. I actually was privileged to be part of one of the meetings that took place here in Bulawayo, where different associations, like here in Bulawayo, we've got the organized associations like Chovambai was the Bobtas and stuff like that. They came and they actually had a meeting with the minister of local government, Honorable July Moyo, with our local Minister of State, Umama Ojudith Ngobe, and all stakeholders were involved there. And these issues were being discussed on how best this thing can be won, actually, vis-a-vis also the trajectory of government to say that we need to be moving to a situation where we have an organized system of ferrying passengers to and from home and work, you see. So there is a give and take here. They had their genuine concerns that they actually brought up, because as you know, that government now was now using the ZUPCO system primarily to try and bring sanity to that level of industry. So the ZUPCO system had its own problems. The operators came up with their own share of criticism on that, especially on the issues of remuneration, vis-a-vis looking at issues that ZUPCO will pay them in RTGS dollars, and yet most of the byproducts of that industry, like diesel, spare parts and stuff like that, are mostly bought using US dollars. So all these things were being brought in, to the table for discussion and possibly for a better solution. But definitely, what I could probably say is that I envisage a point where we have an organized a kind of system. And unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, I think it's only in Bulawayo here where you find such an organized setup, like having all Chovambaiwas and the Buktas that I mentioned earlier on. And then in other places, people want to do things haphazardly. And this is where you find all these laws of the jungle applying and putting people's lives into danger with some commuter operators just being careless and reckless because they're not answerable to anybody at all. So anybody just buys a combi, they wake up, register it, and there they are. They're applying whatever route they want, or they don't even register it at all. They're just flying, and there's no passenger insurance. There's not so many other things that should be there if things are properly organized. So we would definitely need to come to a point where we have an organized system. We can't just keep on saying that we are going to operate abnormally, like it's the law of the jungle. So a system must definitely be brought about, but a lot of discussions and involvement of these stakeholders must come to play so that we all come to an effective conclusion of this crisis. Definitely, the people that bought combis and all with Lamana, they are definitely suffering right now, but. As I said, the option of ZUPCO is there, although it needs to be refined so that it also becomes viable, because at times it will be wasting your time and resources to take a combi and put it under a scheme that will actually run you into a loss.
Yes, siyakuzwa baba uJuma, sicela ufake ngisindebele just briefly khonokho ngamafutshane sebelwa.
Ngiyabonga Mthembu, right, ade ngikutsho lapha ngamafishane ngingathi sikhuluma ngesintu ukuthi udaba lolu olwamakhombi lukhona sibili liyaphila, siyakwazi ukuthi abafowethu kade bephila ngakho, owendi odriver bonke labana labanikazi bamakhombi angikona. Kodwa ke nxa siukhangele futhi kusuka kube nzima ubana siphonguyekela sivumele ubana abantu benze nje umathanda, ngoba abanye bangkhona abantu bebengasaphathi kuhle abantu bona laba ababathwalayo. So kusuka lokuhlukuluzana sokushuka futhi kube ama-circumstances whereby abanye bangikhona sebefaka amakhombe abo ala amaphepha akwanileyo ala ama-passenger insurance nxa kungaba le-accident khonapho sokusiba lolo hlupho into ezifana nalazona lezo so bekufuze vele ukubana kube lokuyisystem okuthize okukhona khangela ungaya eMzansi labana Joza kule metropolitan lokuze ne-services ezithwala abantu kuhle kuhle yabona into zakhona zonke ziqoqekile so lalapha bekusafuza ukuthi kona into leziqoqeke kodwa ungakhangela lapha eZimbabwe kusedolobheni lakobulawayo kuphela lapho olento ezingane ziqoqekile khona ngoba silama-association akhona aphilayo sibili oChovambayiwa labo-Bhupta labanye labana abasebenzayo so khona kwana kuyanceda ukubana ama-members lawana abanikazi bamakhombi nxa bejoyine ama-association lawo kube le-accountability of some sort and ngabe twana ilizwe lonke siyenze njalo bekuzasebenzeka ngcono ngoba kadesi iproblem ekhona ukuthi abanye bangena iganga nje bazinzela umathanda bahlukumeze abantu bame endaweni ezingamelanga bame khona ende nje life yabantu and stuff like that so khona kwana kusuke kube nzima emavini adluleyo Gibbs ngibe lenhlanhla kuke kwaba lo mhlangano obizwe nguminister we-local government ubaba uJuly Moyo elo minister of state wakobulala lapho umama uMancube emhlanhla labana obize bona labo ama-associations engikhuluma ngawo oChovambayiwa labo-Bhupta labanye ama-stakeholders ama-eldermen o-councillors and stuff like that ubana kube kuzohlala phansi kuboniswa kanti kuyini indlela bani esingayenza ubana kube le ndlela ebambekayo ngoba uhulumende kade usufake indaba yonke kuZubko wathi hayi ofuna olekhomba ofuna ubana asebenze kangene ngaphansi kukaZubko so bakhulumile udaba labo balufaka etafuleni bafaka insolo zabo insolo zabo eziningi ubona ukuthi zivela ngaphi emalini ukuthi hayi ikhombi yethu singabe siyifake laphana kodwa imali esizabe sizayizuza eZubko laphana ayisahambelani nalokho esizabe sisebenza ngakho ukuthi kona odizili ukuthi kona ama-spare parts athengwa ngama-US$, ngapha thina uZubko esinika ngama-RTGS so konke lokwana kuke kwafaka etafuleni ngiyabona ngikhuluma sokusahluzwa ukubana babonke bengathola ndlela bane ukuthi basebenzelane ndawonye kuhle kuhle kodwa into ekhona Mthembo asingeke sabe lokhu singena iganga kuphela ake sibe lokuyisystem okuzasebenzeka ukubana both sides awina ama-passengers awine labo abanikazi bamakhombi lawo bawine futhi so kusamele kuhlalelwe phansi kukhulunyiswane ama-stakeholders yonke ehlezi ndawonye ebonisana.
Yes, siyakuzwa kakhulu-ke. That is Mr. Chuma. Marvelous.
Regai vambotaura nechishona timbonzwa kuti imi munoona sei nhuna dziri kutaurwa neavo vanoita mabasa emuchovha vari kuchema kuti vanhu vava kufa nenzara uyezve association yavasibandai vari kutaura kuti pane vanhu vari muassociation uyu vanosvika ivo 45 pari zvino vakatorasikirwa nemabasa sezvo makombi avo kana kuti michovha yavo isiri kukwanisa kuenda kunzvimbo dzakadai savana South Africa.
muri kuinzwa kwandiri here?
Wethu.
Okay, yes. Senza ndambotsanangura ndichitaura nerurimi rwechindevere nechirungu. Nyaya inorwadza chose asi pakurwadza kwayo kunofanira kunge tichigadzira kuti zvinhu izvi zvigadzirike. Chinhu changa chakuitika panapa ndechekuti tanga tapinda sango risingaite vamwe vanhu vakangopinda papa voita madiro vechishungurudza futi vanhu ivavo vari kutakugwa totarisa vamwe vanhu futi vanga vasina mabepa akakwana zviya zvekutoti even kana motikari ikazowira munjodzi vanhu vanotadza kuita vakompaseti nekuti munhu uyu anova asina mapepa akakwana. Ndazotaura futi zvakare ndikati isusu kuno kuBulawayo tanga tichita kunge tiri nani chose nekuti tine ma-associations edu anga achishanda zvakanaka chaizvo. Ndinorangarira kune imwe inonzi Chovambayiwa imwe inonzi Bhupta ma-associations iwawo anga achiita kuti mamembers ese akuda kuoperata vouya pasi pavo vorongana zvakanaka vozorongeka kuti kana vakunoshanda uko koshanda kune some sense of normalcy. Saka izvozvo izvi ndo zvanga achifanira kuti dai takazviita nyika yese kuti tiite ma-associations achaita izvozvo kuitira kuti tigaidhe ma-members iwavo varidzi vemakombi vashande zvakanaka nevanhu because zvanga zvakuitika apa yanga yava the law of the jungle chaiyo chaiyo kuti anga mazvake hazvingafambe kudaro. Ndakaita rombo rakanaka kuti minister we-local government vakambouya kuno kuBulawayo masonto apfuura aya naminister of state wedu vaJudith Ncube Majudith Ncube vakasangana nemastakeholders ivavo vanachovha mubaiwana nabhupta vechitaurisana vechitaurirana marange nenyaya iyoyo kuti ko tingaita sei kuti nyaya idzi dziitwe nokuti hurumende handiti anga ati munhu wese ngaapinde under zupco. Saka vakaisa mapoints avo vakataurirana naminista vechimudza mapoints avo kushungurudzika kwavo kwavanoitwa kuti kana tikaenda pana zupco apa tiri kubhadharwa nema-RTGS. Asi apa kana takuenda panze kuti tinogadzira makombi edu kana takuda kutenga maspare parts acho tinowatenga nema-US dollar. Saka hazvisi kufambirana. Saka kana taisa makombi edu uko hatisi kuwana maprofits aya atinoita tarisira kuti kana munhu ainvesta anofanirwa kuwana profit ka. Saka ipopa ndo pakanga pasvika pastage kuti vanhu vakutaurirana vechionesana, and I hope kuti vachauya nesolution ichazofadza munhu wese, nekuti at the end of the day ka hatingaite zviya zvokuti munhu angoita mazvake hazvingafambe, because at the end of the day zvinogona kushungurudza vamwe zvichifadza vamwe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chuma. Uvali button yako konapo siye kubabu Spanda. Mr. Spanda, you are still on the line, I can see here. So now I think you heard what Mr. Joseph Chuma was saying. He says one of the problems is that some combi operators or long distance operators actually don't treat passengers in a good way. So that's why the government took this kind of stance of saying everyone must go, must be under Zupco and operate like that, because there are problems that people encounter, when they actually rub shoulders with people like you. So what's your take on what Mr. Chuma is saying here?
On our side, I think our record with passengers that we transport association in 1989, we have been transporting passengers in a very professional way. We are registered. We record our passengers on a passenger list before we depart, and those passenger lists we submit them in Pretoria. We give them to the cross-border transport agency. Ours is a very professional organization. We are not like what we call maybe local cases. Ours, we are doing our job in a very professional way.
Yeah, so
we don't engage in any illegal activity. Our cross-border permit, it's clearly stated on our cross-border permit that we mustn't engage in any criminal activity. This is why we've been granted with a cross-border permit. We are registered, we operate in a very, very, very professional way.
Yeah, so
transporting passengers since 1989, we've never had any problems with the law. Yes.
Yes, cela ukufaka ke sindebele sibili sizwa lapho Chuma ubaba uChuma uyakhuluma lapho uthi okunye okuhluphayo Sibanda ukuthi kulabo windi phela owindi batholesa nzima abantu, so labanye abantu nje nxa bedobhadobha abanye emgwaqweni lapha bayahlukuluza abantu. So uthi ngokunye okwenza ukuthi uhulumende ethi abantu bangene ngaphansi kaZupco kumbe kumiswe ukuthi lingasebenzi nxa singafaka nalokho kwe-COVID phezulu. So ungaphendula usithini khonapho ngamafitshane babo?
Hayi, thina ku-cross-border asilabo owindi, silama-queue marshals abhala arejista abantu abahambayo. Umuntu thina silayisha abantu abalama-passport kuphela ezetimota. That's why zilama-stickers akhiye lana abhaliweyo ukuthi cross-border. Ungena umuntu ole-passport kuphela siyabarejista abantu. Njalo ngoDisemba baze basivulele okwamaviki lana amabili. Sasihambisa abantu besiyatesta. Ubufakazi ungabuthola laphana ekuthiwa i-K laboratories alo ngu-JMN form. Lapho besitestisa khona thina abantu. Okubonisa khona ukuthi thina indlela esisebenza ngayo babanye abakhuluma ngabo.
Yeah, so
yeah. Khona laphana ababisiye egoli bathiwa hayi bateste positive. Thina sababisela imali ngoba umphakathi siyawuhlonipha, sihlonipha umshayeli ohamba ngemoto labantu esibalayishayo. Ubufakazi ungabuthola laphana e-K laboratories, yikho lapha besazisa khona abethu abantu besiyatesta. Thina umthetho laphana i-cross border sisebenza ngomthetho lama-passenger list into yonke icacile. Asilabo abantu abahlukumeza abantu. Njalo uhamba udriver nama-passengers kuphela ngudriver yedwa nama-passengers.
Yes, siyakuzwa kakhulu ke sicela ubambe khonapho ke sibise uMarvelous siza ukuthi angangena sithini. Marvelous, we still have Mr. Busani Busontini. So all what Mr. Spanda is saying is that they don't have any touts. So what they do is they've got rank marshals.
Yes.
And these rank marshals are very much respected people, and they don't intimidate anyone. They don't harass passengers. So they do their work diligently. And so he says, you know, the issue that maybe the government is saying there are issues with the kind of way that they're treating passengers is not applicable in this case.
Maybe I have a question for Mr. Sibanda. Was this organization part of those organizations that met the ministers that Mr. Chuma was talking about before I translate what he just said?
Yes, Mr. Spanda, there's the question, Bob.
Yes.
Did you actually go to these meetings that Chuma is talking about in Bulawayo, in which there were discussions over some of these issues that you are facing? So did you ever attend any meetings with the local government officials and councils or whatever?
From my understanding, the meeting that was called here in Bulawayo, it was for local objectives, not our cross-border. Not our cross-border objectives.
Okay.
Oh, okay, quite. Yeah, all right. Uvaleke i-button lakho siyabuya kuwe. Marvelous.
Apho Chukunzwa Sibanda
Before Marvelous continues,
Yes, go ahead.
Right. What I wanted to clarify here is that no, the cross-border association is not a problem at all. And they definitely cannot be affected by this issue of Zupco thing. What happens with the cross-border association is that they're mainly affected by the closure of the border. To say that there's no transportation and movement, I mean, at the moment because of this pandemic. But theirs is a very organized system. I know it very well. And I can allude to Mr. Swanda's points. Definitely, they do their things above board. They don't have a big problem. But their only problem now and challenge is that I think them as an association as well must approach government to try and see how government can open up borders so that people can start moving. You see, there's this fear of these different variants that come up, and normally they come to South Africa, and then when they come here, they leave us a mess for destruction and stuff like that. So this is the point where they need themselves as an association to be engaging the Home Affairs Ministry and stuff like that to see how borders can be open, and then they can operate normally. But they don't fall under this issue of the Zupco regularization that we're actually speaking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe go ahead, Marvelous.
Chuma vanogona kutaura izvozvo pamusoro peava vari kuita mabasa ekunze kwenyika pane zvamataura neshona izvi.
Mr. Chuma, go ahead.
All right. Zvandanga ndichitaura panapa ndezvekuti ava vema-cross border association ava havanyatsobatwa nenyaya yezupco. Nekuti inyaya yezupco iyi yanga ichitaurwa especially vanhu ava vari kuoperata muno muzimbabwe, either vechitakura vanhu kubva mutaundi vechienda kumarokesheni kana kuti kubva kune rimwe taundi kuenda kune rimwe taundi. Asi ava vema-cross border association ava chakavabata chaizvo inyaya yekuvhagwa kwemabhodha. Saka ndakambotaura nevamwe vacho ndichivakurudzira kuti aiwa, imini munofanira kunge muchiaprocha hurumende muchitaurirana navo toona kuti hurumende inogona here kuti irelaxe nyaya yemabhodha avhugwe, nekuti kutori neproblem yekuti vanhu vakutoita border jumping anyway. Saka kunofanira kunge uchioneswana kuti how base can they open for vanhu ivavo chete macross border ivavo kuti vatakure vanhu zvakanaka. Iyo ndofunga inogona kutaurika zvakanaka ivo vakarongana pachavo who approach relevant ministries vechiisa nyaya yavo, because ivo kana ukavatarisa vanhu vakatorongeka kudhara. Saka kwangosara kuti vaite engage maministries wavo kuti zvinhu zvavo zviite sei zvivafambire.
Mr. Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Busani Busotini, chip in there, sir.
Yeah, I've been following what Mr. Chuma and Mr. Spanda were saying. I think what is lacking here is the involvement of the stakeholders when our government makes such decisions. And also, I think the government always tends not to look at the root cause, and they just apply these umbrella policies instead of just addressing the issues. Let's say if the issue is because these guys are the Mawindis, all they had to do is ban the Mawindis and let the Chovas continue working. But they always seem to, they ban everything. It's been more than a year that the commuter buses have been, suspended. You can only operate under ZUPO. And we know that ZUPO is a failed organization. How can you take a failed organization and try to make it a benchmark for, those organizations that are working privately? So I think the government really needs to, involve the stakeholders, starting from the owners of these omnibus, the passengers, and many other associations that are involved, instead of just going ahead and making the rules. I think sometimes in English they say, if it is not broken, don't fix it. Sometimes I feel like our government is good at breaking things up, even where it's not necessary.
Yeah, thank you so much. What is this? Ubaba Spanda, his last word on this issue. So, Mr. Spanda, your last word. Can you tell us exactly what you think the government might do, and whether you're going to engage the government in this matter anytime soon? Go ahead, sir.
What we are kindly asking our respective government ministers is allow us to operate like what the buses are doing. And we will definitely adhere to the strict COVID-19 regulations. That's all. That's what we're asking the government to do for us to open give us a passage second border so that we operate like buses. We definitely follow the laid down COVID restrictions. That's all. That's what we're asking for from our respective government and ministers.
Yes, yeah.
Ebesimcela kuhulumende wethu esimhloniphayo kakhulu ukuthi asivulele ibhoda sikwazi ukusebenza njengamabhasi, kube sithutha umphakathi, silandele imithetho yona le ebekwe phansi eye-COVID, ngoba sonke sinze i-COVID siyayesaba, siyayazi ukuthi ikhona njalo iyabulala. Ngakho-ke sicela sicela kakhulu uhulumende ukuthi ngabe uyasivikela ebhoda ukuze imoto zethu ezivela le-South Africa eze-cross border leziyale sikwazi ukudlula ezalapha eZimbabwe asinikeze ama-permit sikwazi ukusebenza siphile lathi lezinto. Yikho kufanele sikucela kuhulumende ikakhulu ibhoda.
Yes, so Mr. Chuma, maybe you can react there. And,
maybe before Mr. Chuma comes in, let's just translate what Mr. Sibanda is saying. Hearing there kubva kuna vaSibanda vari kutaura ivo kuti ivo shuviro yavo ndeyekuti dai hurumende yakwanisa kuti vavhure mabhodha kuitira kuti avo vanoshanda pasi pegungano ravo vanoita zvemichovha inoenda cross border vakwanise kuita mabasa, nekuti vari kuti ivo vakarongeka pari zvino zvese zviga zvinodiwa zvekuti vanhu vapfeke mamaski, vanhu vaitwe matesti, vanhu vashandise mahand sanitizer vanazvo. Saka shuviro yavo iyo ndeyekuti hurumende dai yanzwa chikumbiro chavo kuitira kuti vavhure mabhodha uyezve votauriranawo neSouth Africa kuitira kuti pavanozosvikawo ikoko zvinhu zvinenge zvakagadzirwa zvakanaka. Vachuma.
Mr. Chuma, yes.
Thank you very much. He's making a very good point, Ubaba Spanda. So all now that it takes is for the association now to get up and go and approach these relevant ministries and put that thing down to them. Because the problem that we normally have most of the time is that we've got these things in our hearts, in our minds, but we don't say them out. Government is only regulated or actually held by being approached and being given these scenarios. They might not even know about all these scenarios per se, but so now if they are approached and these things are put on the table, then government can be able to actually respond. It's a listening government, and definitely it can bend down and see reason once they are approached. So my plea to Mr. Spanda and this association is that please approach the relevant ministries, talk about your issues, tell me your plans, your action plans and everything, how you are going to manage these things and how prepared you are, and present your case, you'll be so shocked. Your case will be heard easily and things will be sorted out. And then coming to the issue that Mr. Ntini said there, I want to tell you that definitely it's not that government just took a decision from Norway. There's been a lot of engagements, even like here in Bulawayo. You find that Wana Chovambayi was and the Buktas that I was talking about were also up in arms trying to fight some combi owners that would just bring their combis and start operating from undesignated points. And this is where in the way they say Zonelo and Vonye. So this thing has been talked about over and over and over again, whereby you find that the combi owner gives the driver the combi. They don't care what the driver does with that combi. So the driver is busy doing all sorts of criminal activities, picking up people from undesignated points and stuff like that. And there is no checks and balance at all. That is why I say that it is important to have an association that will then guide members into how they operate. So it's not that government just took it overnight. These things have been talked about for years and years. Can we operate normally? Can we respect the laws? Can we do A, B, C, D? But then these people that normally don't want to join associations are the ones that spoil things for everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chuma. We're remaining with just only 5 minutes. We had hoped, marvelous, that we're going to discuss even electoral reforms, but we're out of time. Now there's one thing that we can discuss right now, and the issue of the Basketball Africa League.
Before we
go
to
because
Gibbs, let Mr. Chuma just say in Shona what he just said for the benefit of our Shona listeners.
Just 30 seconds, Babuchum. 30 seconds, long as David. Yes.
Thank you very much, marvelous. Zvandataura nezvokuti ava vema-cross border association ava chikumbiro changu chandinacho kuvavari ndechekuti ngavachitora nhau yavo iyi voenda nayo kuma-relevant ministries kuhurumende votaura. Hurumende iyi ukaiaprocha zvakanaka wotaura navo wopresenta kesi yako vanoteerera voona iwe uchinyatsovajekesera kuti aiwa apa tichaita so tiri ready so takabata so tikufamba so maplans enyu akaiswa apo muchashamisika muchiona hurumende ichitovhumburana nemi. Saka torai nyaya dzenyu idzi muendese kuma-relevant ministries, nyaya yenyu ichasolvwa. Then kana takuuya uko vantini vanga vataura kuti zvanzi hurumende inongoda kungoputsa ichiita sei, ndikati handizoba. Hurumende yakabvire kudhara ichitaura nyaya yekuti aiwa rongekai kani musadaro musangooperata kusina mutemo mukati. Asi vanhu ava vangasingateereri and vanhu vacho like kuno kubhurayo kune ma-associations ava vana Chovambayi vanana Bukta vana Chovambayi vacho vanga vachitogwa nemakombi iwavo kuti no uyai mupinde under ma-associations edu vanhu vesingade. Saka vanhu ivava vasingade vaya ndo vari kunyatsokanganisira vanhu vanga vatorongeka kudhara. Saka ipo paya manje ndo pakazonzi munhu wese akutofira vanhu ivavo chete. Saka ndo zvinozofanira kunge zvichigadziswa kuti munhu wese ngaapinde under ma-associations aya tiite zvinhu negwara rakanaka.
Yes, I was a quality. So the last thing, marvelous. We know that second ranked Zamalek actually defeated top seed Union Sportive Monissa of Tunisia. We've got a basketball, follower here, and that is Musontin. So Ntini, your team was knocked out, the Angolans, right? So they didn't go anywhere. No, go ahead. Tell us what you think about that. 1 minute, chat.
So my team was actually the Rwandan team.
Oh, yes,
one that
yes.
I selected. And I think for the obvious reasons, I think, I was looking at the star power that they had. There were a few people that came from the US playing for that team. So that's where I put my last dollar. But definitely, I guess if we can learn anything from this, never follow what I say when it comes to basketball. They were embarrassed. They didn't even come second or third. They actually came fourth.
Yeah.
So, but I think at the end of the day, what is good out of this, this was the inaugural tournament in Africa. I think going forward, we'll see many teams across Africa and hopefully in Zimbabwe. So this is a great opportunity for basketball in Africa in general. I think we are used to seeing a lot of stars like Mutombo and others coming to the US and playing the NBA. It looks like now people in Africa, they may get entertained by their own stars. Just like people watch Highlanders and Bulawayo Chiefs and Bulawayo City. Hopefully soon people will be watching basketball on a daily basis in Africa. maybe some lucky people, some lucky players may get picked up for the NBA or the D League. But I was looking at the age of most people that are playing for the African teams. They tend to be older, and the NBA is they want to get the 18-year-olds, the 19, 20-year-olds. So when you see these guys that are already in their 30s, most probably they will not make it in the NBA.
Mr. Tini, thank you very much. We've run out of time. There's no extra time. I don't know. In basketball, is there any extra time? Maybe not. So I think we have come to the end of the show. We are remaining with only 5 seconds. So I wish to thank our guests this evening, Mr. Kumbula Sibanda of the Zimbabwe International Long Distance Transport Association, Mr. Joseph Chuma, a ZANU-PF Central Committee member, and Mr. Musani Musontini, an independent political and social commentator. Signing off from Maryland, this is Kip Jube saying, good night, Zimbabwe.
Toti makorokoto kune chikwata chezamalek chekuEgypt ndo chakatora mukombe weBasketball Africa League. Zimbabwe iri kuti aiwa gore rinouya vada kupinda.
Good night.
Kwamutare chiri kuti tinozvigona. I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya here in Washington.